Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a single project that's set to totally reshape Ethiopia's agricultural future and maybe even its power on the world stage. It's a really fascinating story about natural gas, food, and what is basically a multi-billion-dollar bet on the future.
Okay, let's just start with that headline number, because it's a big one. $2.5 billion. And look, this isn't just some random figure. We're talking about one of the largest industrial investments in Ethiopia's entire history. It's a massive bet on the country's most vital sector.
But, this whole thing is about way more than just the cash. It's a calculated, strategic play for something that every nation dreams of: food sovereignty. The ability to feed its own people on its own terms without depending on anyone else.
So who's behind this massive deal? I mean, we're talking about an agreement so important it was signed right in front of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed himself. Let's look at the key players.
This deal brings together two absolute heavyweights. On one side, you've got Ethiopian Investment Holdings, which is the country's own strategic investment fund. And on the other side, you have the Dangote Group, a real giant in African industry, famous for these kinds of huge, continent-spanning projects.
Now, this part is really interesting, how they've split the ownership. The Dangote Group is bringing its industrial know-how and capital, taking the lead with a 60% stake. But, and this is key, Ethiopia is holding on to a big 40% piece of the pie, making sure the project's success flows directly back to the nation.
And you can see that big picture thinking in what Aliko Dangote himself said. He framed this as a pivotal moment not just for Ethiopia, but for all of Africa. For him, this isn't just a business deal. It's a massive step for the whole continent's food security. So what exactly are they building for all that money? Well, the short answer is something absolutely massive. We're talking top-tier, global-scale stuff here. Okay, get ready for this number because it's pretty wild. They're aiming to pump out 3 million metric tons of urea fertilizer every single year. That is a game-changing amount of fertilizer for Ethiopia's farmers and its entire agricultural system. And just to put that number into perspective, this one plant in one location is going to launch Ethiopia straight into the top 5 single-site fertilizer producers on the entire planet. I mean, that's an incredible jump, right? From buying fertilizer from other countries to being one of the world's biggest producers. And they're not messing around with the timeline either. It's super ambitious. The plan is to have this whole thing built and running in just 40 months. And that's not even the end of it. They're already planning for what comes next, looking to expand into other kinds of fertilizers down the road. What's really cool about this is how smart the whole setup is. It's like a perfect closed loop. So they start with Ethiopia's own natural gas from local fields. Then a new pipeline shoots that gas straight to the complex, which uses it for power to, produce the fertilizer. It's a really powerful example of a country using what it has to build what it needs. Okay, so we've talked about the huge numbers and the impressive scale, but what does all of this actually mean for everyday people in Ethiopia? What's the real impact on the ground? Right away, you had the Prime Minister framing this as part of a much bigger national story. So this isn't just about building a factory. It's being presented as a foundational piece of Ethiopia's journey toward feeding itself and modernizing its entire agricultural sector. So why is this such a big deal? Well, you've got to understand, agriculture isn't just part of Ethiopia's economy. It is the economy. We're talking about more than 70% of the entire population relying on it to make a living. So helping farmers isn't just a policy, it's a national priority. So the hope here is that the positive effects will just ripple out everywhere. First off, you've got thousands of new jobs in the Somali state. For farmers, it means they can actually get the fertilizer they need, reliably. And for the country as a whole, it means spending way less money on imports, which should boost crop yields and in the end, make the country's food supply much more secure. But look, the ambition here goes way beyond just feeding Ethiopia. The real goal is to completely flip the script on the country's economic role in the whole region. And when you look at the before and after, it's pretty dramatic. Think about it. Ethiopia goes from being a customer, totally dependent on the ups and downs of global markets, to being a major supplier for all its neighbors. It's a complete 180 on its current economic position. And once you're that regional hub, this project turns into more than just an economic tool. It's a strategic one. It really boosts Ethiopia's standing and competitiveness, not just in its own neighborhood, but right across Africa. So, when you boil it all down, the money, the massive scale, the regional impact, it all comes back to one really powerful concept that's driving this whole thing. And that idea is food sovereignty. Now, that's a bit more than just having enough food to eat. It's about having control over your own food supply. It's about building a country that can weather global storms, one that doesn't have to rely on other countries' politics or markets to feed its own people.
The CEO of Ethiopian Investment Holdings, Dr. Brooke Tai, he called this a breakthrough. And you can totally see why he'd say that. I mean, for a developing country to own a 40% stake in a world-class facility like this, especially one that supports its most critical industry, that's just a huge, huge win.
So the big question is, can one single project really do all that? Can it secure a nation's food future and reshape an entire region's economy? Well, with a $2.5 billion bet on the table, Ethiopia is saying absolutely yes. And you can be sure the world will be watching over the next 40 months to see if this incredible vision becomes a reality.